Chapter 38, The Biggest Idea. The library was a very different place without Mrs. Jones in it. I stood at the entrance between the two pedestals with the book detectors in them, but even from there I could feel the difference. It was quieter in the library, and sadder. It made my chest ache, like when I'd fallen off my bike and gotten the wind knocked out of me. The library had been the only place in the world I loved. The only place that felt like it was all mine, even if other people were there at the same time. The school library had been my home, but this wasn't my home or my library anymore. I didn't want to go one step farther into that place, but I needed to return Indian captive. I crept up to the front desk. There was another lady sitting there, a substitute for Mrs. Jones. She was a big white woman, like Mrs. Jones, and had glasses on a chain, just like Mrs. Jones, only hers were square. She wore a colorful dress like Mrs. Jones, too, only it was red and white stripes, not polka dots. She looked up from a copy of one of those celebrity gossip magazines and said, "Yes?" It was creepy. Mrs. Jones should be sitting there, not this person. Then I realized who she was. She was the mirror Mrs. Jones. "I'm just returning a book," I said. I dropped it on the counter and ran right into Trey McBride. Neither of us fell down, but a stack of papers he'd been carrying went flying all over the floor. Sorry, I said. "Shh," mirror Mrs. Jones said. The real Mrs. Jones never shushed people in the library. I immediately bent to help Trey pick up his papers, till I finally saw what it was I was picking up. "Wait, what is this?" I asked him. "It's their request for reconsideration forms, the forms that Mrs. Jones was always telling Trey's mom she had to fill out if she wanted to challenge a book." I flipped through them. Each and every one was a request for reconsideration form for a different book that hadn't been banned. Not yet. These forms were asking that they all be removed from the library, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was they hadn't been filled out by Mrs. Spencer. "These are all in your handwriting," I said. "No talking," mirror Mrs. Jones barked, making me jump. I pushed the papers back into Trey's hands and kept on pushing him back out into the hall. "You're as bad as your mom," I yelled at him when we were out of the library. He started to say. "It's bad enough that she's already banned half the books in the library. Now you have to go and ban the other half?" I said. I didn't know if this was the real Amy Ann or the mirror Amy Ann, but she was back, and she wasn't going to be quiet anymore. Trey tried to say, but I cut him off. "At first I hated you," I told him. "You drew that awful picture of me as a mouse last year and hurt my feelings. Then we had to work together on our Bill of Rights project, and I thought you were different, and I started to like you. Then I thought you ratted me out and got the locker library busted, and I hated you all over again." Trey frowned. "But then I found out it wasn't you who turned me in, and I started to like you again, and now this." I snatched some of the papers back from him and read out the titles he wanted to ban. "Sounder," "The Indian in the Cupboard," "The Chronicles of Prydain," "My Teacher is an Alien," "The Kid Who Only Hit Homers." Are you kidding with this? If you just let me... "What's going to happen when you challenge every single book in the library?" I asked him. "What then, Trey? I'll tell you what will happen. You challenge every book in the library for every stupid little reason you can think of, and there won't be a single book left on the shelves for anyone to check out." "Exactly," Trey said. What?" I said. I didn't understand. That was seriously what he was trying to do? "Are you finished?" Trey said. "Can I talk now?" I nodded, still confused. "Okay, first, you hated me because of the picture I drew of you last year?" My face burned hot. I couldn't believe I'd actually told him that. But this was the new Amy Ann, the one who wasn't going to keep quiet anymore. I took a deep breath. "Yes," I said, "you drew me as a mouse." Reading a book, Trey said. But I'm a mouse. Everybody else was a lion and eagles and cheetahs and things. Mice are... Quiet, Trey said. Timid? I huffed. Yes. So were you. I mean, you're not now, he said, straightening his shirt from where I'd pushed him. But you always had your nose in a book and never said anything. And whenever anybody did say something to you, it was like you were having this conversation with them in your head, but you never said any of it out loud. That's crazy, I wanted to tell him. I don't have conversations with other people in my head. Then I blushed. He was right. I did it all the time. I was doing it again right now. You're right, I said. I hated to admit it, but it was true. I'm sorry it hurt your feelings, Trey said. I didn't mean it to. It's just how I saw you. I wouldn't draw you the same way now. Okay, so what's the deal with these request for reconsideration forms? I asked him. Trey smiled. What better way to show everybody how stupid it is to ban books than to take it as far as it can go? Once you ban one book, you can ban them all. He tried to straighten the mess of papers in his arms. This is just a start. When I'm finished, there won't be one book left on the Shelbourne Library shelves. Just wait until the TV cameras get a load of that. So, you don't really want these books banned? I asked. I never wanted any books banned, Trey said. That was all my mom's idea. I like Captain Underpants. I'm trying to draw a book just like it. Of course, Trey's mom hadn't known about Captain Underpants until he checked it out from the library in the first place. And every time I saw him, Trey was drawing. That must have been why Mrs. Jones introduced him to Dave Pilkey. She knew he was trying to draw a book like Captain Underpants. I'm sorry, I told him. I always thought you agreed with your mom. So did everybody else, Trey said. I nodded to the forms in his hands. If you do this, if you get all these books banned, everybody's going to think you really do agree with her. Trey shrugged. Doesn't matter now. Everybody already hates me because of her. I felt awful. I'd done the same thing, blamed him for what his mom was doing. I'm the one to do it, Trey said. Maybe in the end, everybody'll see why I did it, if they don't kill me first. There's thousands of books, I said. It'll take you all year, and they'll probably figure out what you're trying to do before you can finish. Trey shrugged again. I have to do something. I knew exactly what he meant. It was the same way I felt when I started the BBLL, and it was exactly the same way I felt now. Don't turn those in, I told him. Not yet. Turn them in all at once. When? He said. Like you said, that'll take forever. It needs to happen now, while people still care. I know, I said, which is why we're going to need some help. We? Said Trey. We, I said.